once single-handedly arrested 17 outlaws in one trip and brought them all back alive. Another time, he outdrew 3 gunmen who had him at gunpoint, killing 2 and arresting the 3rd without breaking a sweat. This isn't a movie character. This was a real man. One of the most feared and respected lawmen in the Wild West. This is the incredible story of the black deputy who captured 3,000 outlaws and inspired the Lone Ranger. Bass Reeves was born into slavery in 1838 in Crawford County, Arkansas. As a young boy, he was owned by William S. Reeves, a wealthy landowner who eventually moved Bass and his family to Texas. Life as a slave was tough. Bass worked in the fields, cared for horses, and eventually became a personal assistant to William's son, George Reeves. Although this position gave Bass a bit more comfort, he was still a slave. He worked as George's coachman, bodyguard, and valet, all while dreaming of freedom. That dream finally became reality when the Civil War broke out. According to family stories, Bass and George got into a heated argument during a card game, and Bass knocked George out cold. Seizing the opportunity, he escaped into Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma. Some say he even fought with Native American tribes like the Creek and Seminole, who were aligned with the Union. During his time in Indian Territory, Reeves sharpened his survival skills. He learned to speak Cherokee, Creek, and Seminole, became an expert marksman, and developed the wilderness knowledge that would later make him one of the most formidable lawmen in the Wild West. After the Civil War, Bass Reeves settled into life as a farmer in Van Buren, Arkansas, with his wife Nellie. Together, they raised a large family, 10 children in total. Reeves probably would have lived a quiet, peaceful life, but then along came Judge Isaac Parker, better known as the Hanging Judge. In 1875, Parker was given the tough job of cleaning up Indian Territory, which had become a hideout for outlaws, murderers, and thieves. He needed fearless deputies to patrol a massive 75,000 square mile area that stretched from Arkansas into Oklahoma. Bass Reeves, with his expert marksmanship, knowledge of the land, and ability to speak several Native American languages, was the perfect fit. Despite the racial barriers of the time, Reeves was made one of the first black U.S. Marshals west of the Mississippi. At 6 feet 2 inches tall, with a handlebar mustache and black Stetson hat, Reeves was an imposing figure on horseback. But it wasn't just his looks that made him famous. It was his unmatched skill in tracking down criminals that earned him legendary status in the Wild West. If you're learning a lot from this video so far, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Reeves was fearless, determined, and lightning fast with his gun. He was known for staying calm in the most dangerous situations, earning a reputation as a lawman who was unshakable no matter what. Newspapers often told stories of his daring exploits, like the time he rounded up 17 outlaws on a single trip and hauled them all back to Fort Smith in a wagon to face Judge Parker. But Reeves wasn't just a sharpshooter. He was a master of disguise. One of his most famous tricks came when he was tracking 2 outlaws hiding at their mother's cabin. Instead of charging in with guns drawn, Reeves disguised himself as a raggedy old beggar. He knocked on the door, asking for food and a place to rest, and the mother, having no idea who he really was, let him in. When her sons arrived that night, they never suspected they were sharing a roof with the lawmen hunting them. After they fell asleep, Reeves quietly handcuffed them both. The next morning, they woke up prisoners. Of course, not all of his captures went so smoothly. Take the case of the Brunter brothers, 3 notorious outlaws who managed to get the drop on Reeves, holding him at gunpoint. But Reeves didn't even blink. He asked them what day it was, saying he needed to mark their arrest warrants with the date. The brothers, confident they had the upper hand, laughed at his boldness. But while they were distracted, Reeves grabbed one of their guns, drew his own, and in a flash, shot 2 of them dead and arrested the 3rd. Bass Reeves' sense of justice was so strong that he even arrested his own son. In one of the most heartbreaking moments of his life, Reeves' son Benny was charged with murdering his wife. When the arrest warrant landed on Reeves' desk, he didn't hesitate for a second. He tracked down Benny himself, arrested him, and saw him through to conviction. Benny was sentenced to life in prison, though he was later pardoned for good behavior. This shows just how serious Reeves was about his duty. Family or not, the law always came first. Despite being involved in countless shootouts, Reeves had an almost unbelievable ability to dodge injury. There are multiple stories of bullets tearing through his hat or grazing his clothes, but somehow, he always came out unharmed. In one instance, an assassin tried to ambush Reeves by firing from a railroad trestle. The bullets missed their mark, and Reeves, staying calm as always, fired back and scared the shooter off. Another time, Reeves was after the notorious outlaw Jim Webb, a gunslinger with a deadly reputation. Reeves, using one of his signature moves, disguised himself as a down-on-his-luck cowboy to get close to Webb. Even though Webb and his partner were armed and ready, Reeves disarmed Webb in an instant, subdued his partner, and took both men into custody without breaking a sweat. These kinds of daring encounters made Bass Reeves a legend in Indian Territory. Criminals quickly learned that if Bass Reeves was on their trail, there wasn't much chance of escaping. You might be wondering, how does this legendary black lawman tie into the story of the Lone Ranger? While there's no concrete proof, many believe Bass Reeves was the real-life inspiration for the famous masked hero. The similarities are hard to ignore. Both worked in lawless territories, both partnered closely with Native Americans, and both were known for their expert marksmanship. Bass's life is like something straight out of a Western movie, full of shootouts, daring arrests, and stories that seem larger than life. It's easy to imagine that tales of Bass Reeves's incredible career found their way into the folklore that eventually inspired the Lone Ranger. Whether that connection is true or not, one thing's for sure. Bass Reeves's legacy as a frontier hero is impossible to deny. By the time Oklahoma became a state in 1907, Bass Reeves had retired from the U.S. Marshal Service. After 32 years on the job, capturing over 3,000 criminals and killing at least 14 outlaws in the line of duty, he had certainly earned his rest. But even in retirement, Reeves wasn't ready to slow down. He became a city police officer in Muskogee, Oklahoma, continuing to serve as a lawman until his health began to decline. In 1910, Bass Reeves passed away from Bright's disease at the age of 72. The newspapers that reported his death called him a fearless lawman who had helped bring order to the Wild West. His legacy was cemented as one of the greatest lawmen in American history. Bass Reeves wasn't just a lawman, he was a trailblazer. From slavery to becoming one of the most respected figures in the Wild West, his life is a testament to resilience, bravery, and unwavering dedication to justice. Whether or not he inspired the Lone Ranger, one thing is clear: Bass Reeves was the real deal, a true hero of the frontier. The Wild West may be long gone, but the legends of men like Bass Reeves will live on forever. If you were amazed by Bass Reeves' story, make sure to check out our other videos on incredible historical figures.